The Village's Peace and the Farmer's Daughter. The village lay nestled between endless fields of golden wheat and the dark outline of a silent forest. Life here was simple, quiet, and bound by traditions. Farmers rose at dawn to tend their crops, women gathered near the well to exchange gossip, and children played barefoot on dusty paths. Among all the villagers, there was one family that stood out, not because of wealth, but because of the beauty and kindness of the farmer's only daughter, Soraya. Soraya was a gentle soul, admired by everyone in the village. Her laughter carried like the soft chime of bells, and her eyes reflected the purity of a clear spring. She often helped her father in the fields, carrying bundles of wheat or feeding the animals with an effortless grace that made her presence feel almost angelic. Some said she was blessed by the heavens, a symbol of prosperity for the farmer's household. But admiration always comes with envy. Whispers lingered among a few jealous villagers, who muttered that no one could remain so flawless without a hidden darkness. The farmer brushed off such talk, believing his daughter's goodness would protect her from all harm. Yet, as the sun set each evening and shadows crept across the fields, a strange unease began to stir in the hearts of those who watched her. Something about her beauty seemed too perfect, too fragile, as if the village's peace itself rested upon her existence, and fate was waiting to test it. The peace of the village shattered on a stormy night. The wind howled like a chorus of restless spirits, and heavy rain lashed against rooftops, drowning the fields in mud. Inside the farmer's house, the old wooden shutters rattled violently as thunder split the sky. Soraya, who had been sitting by the oil lamp, suddenly rose and stepped toward the door as though some unseen force was calling her name. Her father, half asleep, barely noticed the faint creak of the door opening. When dawn arrived, Soraya was gone. Her bedding was untouched, her slippers lay neatly by the door, and there were no footprints leading outside, only the lingering chill of damp air inside the room. The farmer's panic grew with each passing hour. He searched the fields, called her name into the forest, and even waded into the rising river, but there was no trace of her. The villagers soon joined the search, carrying lanterns and sticks, but all they found were broken branches at the edge of the woods and a single ribbon from Soraya's hair tangled in the thorns. Some whispered she had been taken by wild animals. Others claimed she had been lured by spirits that haunted the forest during storms. By the third day, hope began to fade. The farmer's eyes grew hollow from sleepless nights, and fear spread among the villagers. A dreadful silence hung over the house, for deep inside, they all knew, disappearances in such nights never ended with ordinary explanations. Days passed after Soraya's disappearance, and the farmer's house no longer felt like a home. The silence was heavy, broken only by the restless creak of wooden beams at night. Yet, soon the silence gave way to something worse, strange, unexplainable signs that chilled the farmer's heart. At night, windows that had been firmly shut would slam open with violent force, letting in gusts of cold air. The oil lamps flickered without wind, their flames bending as though something invisible moved through the room. Scratches began to appear on the walls, deep and jagged, as if clawed hands had scraped across them. When the farmer tried to paint over the marks, they reappeared the next morning, longer, darker, and more grotesque. Neighbors began whispering that the girl's spirit had not left, but had been claimed by something unnatural. Some swore they had seen her pale figure drifting near the edge of the fields at dusk, her long hair hanging wet as though she had just risen from a river. Animals, too, seemed to sense the presence. The cows refused to enter their stalls, dogs barked at empty corners, and crows gathered on the rooftop, cawing endlessly. The farmer tried to dismiss these fears, convincing himself it was grief and exhaustion playing tricks on his mind. But the truth could not be ignored. Each night, as he lay in his bed, he heard faint whispers in his daughter's voice calling from the shadows, soft, broken, and terrifyingly close. One moonless night, after weeks of torment and unanswered questions, the farmer awoke to the faint sound of footsteps outside his door. At first, he thought it was a dream, the shuffle of soft feet across the dirt courtyard. But then he heard it again, closer, accompanied by the creak of the old wooden gate. Trembling, he lit a lantern and stepped outside. There, at the edge of the field, stood a figure he recognized instantly, his daughter, Soraya. Her white dress clung damply to her body as though she had walked through rain, though the sky was dry and still. Her hair hung over her face in wet strands, dripping onto the soil. For a moment, the farmer's heart leapt with joy, but as she lifted her head, the lantern light revealed what his mind struggled to accept. Her once bright eyes now glowed faintly red, like embers hidden beneath ash. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her lips moved soundlessly before a whisper escaped, a whisper that echoed unnaturally in the night air. "Father," she called, but the voice was hollow, stretched, as though spoken by many tongues at once. The farmer rushed forward, desperate to embrace her, yet the closer he came, the more the air grew unbearably cold. A sickly stench, like rotting earth, clung to her presence. Though she looked like Soraya, every instinct in him screamed that this was not his daughter anymore. And when she finally smiled, her teeth were no longer human. The villagers, unsettled by Soraya's eerie return, gathered in hushed groups to debate her condition. Some believed she had been cursed by the spirits of the forest. Others whispered she was no longer human at all. It was the oldest woman in the village, an herbalist with clouded eyes and trembling hands, who finally broke the silence. She spoke of an ancient legend. The forest beyond the fields was not just trees and shadows, but a resting place for restless souls. Long ago, women who had died unjustly were buried there, their anger and sorrow binding them to the earth. On stormy nights, these spirits sought a vessel to return to the living world. The herbalist claimed Soraya had been taken on such a night, her body stolen and reshaped into a vessel for one of those vengeful souls. The farmer, tormented but unwilling to believe, begged for a cure. The herbalist warned that there was little hope. "She wears your daughter's face," the woman said, "but she is no longer your blood. What lives in her now is hungry, and hunger has no end." As if to prove her words, Soraya began to change more each day. Her reflection no longer appeared in mirrors. Her shadow moved even when she stood still, and children cried when she came near. She wandered the house at night, whispering to unseen figures, her voice no longer her own. The truth was undeniable. Soraya had become a vessel of darkness. The nights grew heavier with terror after the truth of Soraya's transformation spread. The farmer locked his doors and prayed, but it was useless. His daughter no longer obeyed the laws of flesh and blood. Each evening, she slipped from the house without opening doors, gliding silently into the fields. Villagers awoke to find livestock slaughtered, their blood drained, and claw marks gouged deep into barn walls. Chickens vanished, dogs whimpered themselves hoarse, and the once peaceful village became a place of dread. People whispered that Soraya's presence had awakened other restless spirits. Strange shapes began to linger in the mist, figures standing at the edge of the fields, faces too blurred to recognize, vanishing when approached. At night, the sound of wailing drifted from the forest, echoing across the village like cries of the damned. Children were kept indoors, doors were barred, and even the bravest men refused to walk the fields after dark. The farmer's own torment deepened. He wanted to save his daughter, but she no longer recognized him. Sometimes, he would catch her staring at him from the shadows, her eyes glowing faintly as if studying him like prey. Once, when he tried to touch her hand, her skin burned ice-cold, and she hissed in a voice that was not hers. The curse was no longer confined to Soraya. It was spreading, seeping into every corner of the village. The return of one girl had awakened an ancient hunger that threatened to consume them all. The village could not endure the curse any longer. Fear had swallowed every home, and the once thriving fields now stood abandoned under the weight of silence. Desperation forced the villagers to turn to the herbalist once more. She spoke of a forbidden ritual, dangerous and cruel, that could sever the bond between the spirit and Soraya's body. But she warned, to save her soul, you must be willing to lose her flesh. The farmer, torn between love and duty, agreed. On a moonless night, the villagers gathered in the forest clearing where Soraya had first disappeared. They formed a circle of salt and fire, chanting words older than memory. Soon, the air thickened and the shadows trembled. Soraya appeared at the edge of the flames, her face twisted in rage, her eyes glowing like burning coals. She screamed in voices that did not belong to her, shaking the trees and shattering lanterns. The farmer stepped forward, clutching the amulet the herbalist had given him. Tears streamed down his face as he begged his daughter to return. For a moment, her real voice broke through, a faint whisper of "Father," but it was drowned by the spirit's fury. The ritual's final words were spoken, and the fire roared skyward. Soraya's body convulsed, her screams echoing through the forest, until suddenly there was silence. When the flames died, nothing remained of her but the ribbon she once wore in her hair. The curse was broken, but the farmer's house stood forever empty, a reminder that some loves demand the greatest sacrifice.